So let me begin by briefly introducing myself. Uh, I'm a visual artist based in Japan, already introduced, and I have also published several books as an art critic, including my years of study. I have been engaged in the art world for over 50 years. This video, uh, sorry, you can see this one. So, uh, so maybe now you can see. And this video shows my solo exhibition held in the spring of 2025, which occupied nearly the entire museum contemporary art Tokyo. Looking back now, I must acknowledge that Hansaup Janap was one of the foundational artists behind my artworks. When I say foundational, I mean that the essence of Alp's work had genuinely permeated my home sensibility and ethos. I first made and shown something I could call my own work in 1979, 46 years ago. uh, the first please see my video, and it's just only 3 minutes. So introducing my whole of the artworks in these 50 years. I have I am making the painting, sculpture, and architecture, and the film and the landscape. So a lot of genre. So this exhibition consists of two floors, and one floor was until 2020, and that is a kind of things happened on my body. It's a stroke. So, but fortunately, this is a very severe stroke, but fortunately or miraculously, doctor said miracle, and I have totally recovered and totally changed. And I became more productive. And the next flower is to exhibit only 3 years, 100 pieces, include huge sculptures. This is now I'm showing the old works, the 2020s. It's a ceramics works. It's drawn by my hand. Each each tile is different, of course. It's I and also this is a collage of the fabric. And this is the first work. Now I started to uh, explain. I was influenced by the Zohi Toibe in such time, 97. The sculpture and also sculpture. Maybe it's somehow there's echoes of Hans Alp and children books. And when I made this, I was only 20 years old. It's a very early work. Comic strips. absurd, and some figurative comics like sculpture, soil, and a kind of three-dimensional cartoon. And these drawings I'm using the robotics, uh, collaborate with robotics. And I made all of these. And now the showing some of the project of the huge pieces and landscape sculpture piece. Yeah. This is to show the method how to make this landscape. This is a kind of project collaborate with Fujiko Nakaya, is a famous fog artist to making artificial fog or mist. This is me and collaborator in the town. I'll explain later. I have been involving in the huge project in the landscape, 35 years. So end of my lecture, I will explain is how I found the echoes of the Hans Alp and the Joseph Alp in this landscape project. And this is showing the staffs of my um, school, art school. I was a director, now it closed. So showing my performance used to be. And this is showing the drawing at the hospital. This is a stroke and the MRI. And I couldn't make my hand, nothing. So, but 2 months later, suddenly my hand miraculously started to move. And this is my robotics. It's a totally, uh, so it's a kind of the similar experience, example experience of the robotics makeup. And my paralyzed hand makes drawing. It's a kind of resemblance. And this is after 2022. It's after the stroke, the comeback. Small pieces. So kind of the characteristics of my works, and particularly the painting, is always with a very long story. I say that this is a title, but people say this is a story or a novel. It's very long. So uh, also this. So I can't introduce this title now. So it's you can see how long this is. So there is a description paper and I put on the wall. This painting is quite huge. It's a 2 meter, around 10 feet, 10 feet high and 12 3 feet long, wide. Now you can see some sculpture through the pathway. So this is a kind of, I'm using resin, the new material, and of course I'm using uh, 3D scanner and printer, and it's combined with several techniques put together. The first model is made by the soil, clay, and it adjust the several material as text, texture and something. It's a quite huge everything. It's a bronze, very traditional way. This is a small piece and replicated the same things with the other material. It's very quite precise. So also I made this elephant. It's a kind of sound game, and the elephant in Japan means statue. And this is the last piece. Somehow, uh, yeah, this one. So this is another the optional exhibition. It's for the children and the cat. It's a, it's a kind of product. Yeah, finished. So anyway, this is the first piece, and I think I first made and showed something I could call my own work in 1979, 46 years ago. This is viewing with now with present day eyes. Um, I can clearly perceive art sensibility and influence now. So, but such time I didn't notice. Or, of course, I knew the Alp, but I didn't understand the chord, maybe. And this one is so. My first works as a series of drawing and collages. I made the drawings using lines selected from dressmaking patterns. These came as supplement in the Burda in German magazine, many of you may know, which I bought at an imported bookstore. The collages were made from printed fabrics I choose based on those drawings. Oops. About 2 years later, I presented this piece of small reliefs, which became my public debut work. This one is all of the patterns that came from also the uh, patterns of the cross, the Buddha. And this photograph shows the exhibition at the Paris Biennale in 1982, where my work was selected and displayed at the Musée d'Art Moderne de Paris, Museum of the Modern Art of the City of Paris. In the context of that time, these small works as a nature do not judge minimalism nor composition, relying on arbitrary sensual balance like Anthony Carlos. While they appear, the composition of each maintained a single area, like planet. Each work floating on the wall contained its own time and space, creating a unique volume that transcended physical size. That's what I wrote in my note in such time I was a kid. While the visual impression and the form of the works has a distinctiveness that captures sensation and memory, their uniqueness perhaps lies in the deliberate use of styrofoam as a base material with weakness, lightness, and fragility created a certain slippage. Something fleeting, transient, a visual instability, and the gap between that and the lasting impression retained in memory. A sense of momentaneous and chance, as if suddenly coming into being, yet with lasting impressions. I called this series uh, building through construction at that time. Rather than architecture, it was about making perception aware of its own territory, organizing a unique territory. These works marked my starting point as an artist, as a plastic artist. Needless to say, the piece using crossing pattern was strongly influenced by Hans Arp and even more so by Sophie Teuber. While the individual panel shapes in these reliefs may resemble Alps relief, the way the panel connected and their structure differ rather than composing separate independent panels joined together, the edge of each panel flow as one continuous line, emphasizing our continuity that transcends being individual visual pieces. In other words, like a single sculpture, I was curating one continuous whole as a sequence of panel-like form. Therefore, these were not flat reliefs parallel to the wall, but rather sculptural architectural works containing their own distinct space. Mm, but yeah. Uh, However, looking at these my works I knew today, it seems so something. Mm, it seems to me that they already contained development from Alps sculpture in the round series toward his threshold configuration series threshold configuration series. In other words, my work appeared to have developed by tracing back from the structure of threshold to the potential that has been retained within the round pieces. This one. My work spans diverse fields, and I don't believe it can be explained solely. Already, I showed my exhibition. Maybe you can see my work spans diverse fields, and I don't believe it can be explained solely through its relationship with Alp. However, if I dare to consider it in terms of formal and structural resonance with Alp, and the essence I received from him, I could say that this essence, that ethos, has extended even into such large-scale works and environmental works and site-specific interventions. Alp's work was familiar to me. Alp's work was familiar to me from childhood due to my family environment. My father was an architect, and my mother worked as a dressmaker and was also an inventor. Our home was filled with various artistic products, which I grew up surrounded by. In fact, the work of Western avant-garde artists such as Arp had been introduced to Japan since before World War II and exerted considerable influence. Indeed, the synchronicity with global movement in the work of Japanese artist and designer was, if after the war, however, these works were reduced to merely their visual appearance and digested as prototypes of modern design. For example, there is a wrapping paper of a well-known, long-established department store that every Japanese person recognizes. A design that reflects Alps influence, surely. Similarly, the work of Isamu Noguchi, an outstanding uh, sculptor who we inherited from Alps approach, was received at the time, both in America and Japan, not so much as avant-garde, but rather as an ideal for refined modern design. In the sense, as Alp's work became more widely known after the war, it was simultaneously and gradually reduced to something superficial and decorative, losing its original profound meaning. His works were sometimes called poetic objects, but the very meaning of poetic itself came to be used in trivial sense. When I began my involvement in the art world in the mid-1970s, my understanding of the radical core of avant-garde practice starts with the rediscovery of the radicality in his poetry, particularly. Was not something one utters oneself, rather like jagged stones or a cloud drifting across the sky, very suddenly appear before us and are discovered. I am given and taught previously unknown meanings and sensations through the ensemble these words created. We are given and taught previously unknown meanings and sensations through the ensemble these words create, like cloud and stone. In other words, the core that connect poetry and the sculpture works is that works are like stones and words cast by nature, and the artistic act consists in receiving them and throwing them back into the world. It was through understanding this radicality, this attitude, which is to say philosophy towards the world and the environment, including political circumstance, that I came to grasp Alp's true significance. Rather, this understanding came about through discovering the existence of his partner, Sophie Teuber. She was a dancer who employed the structures inherited in textile in everything from architectural design to choreographic notation. In other words, like textiles and woven fabric, she would disassemble, unravel, cut apart, and reassemble the present time. I sensed profound implications mediated through the body in this approach. My mother was this dressmaker and invented this made her work feel familiar to me. I would later collaborate with Tosha Brown. Um, Tosha Brown, I created two robots, each about 2.8 meters tall, that reproduced on a larger scale the exact pen movement Tosha made when drawing for her uh, choreographer, choreography. In Tosha and her drawing work, I saw Sophie's figure overlapping in such time. And back to the before World War II. As I mentioned earlier, the essential significance of Alp's work was understood more profoundly in pre-war Japan than in the post-war period. The concentrated reception and development took place from the mid-1920s to the late 1930s as the center were young, cutting-edge artists in their 20s and 30s at the time. The first one, Tomoyoshi Murayama, 1901 to 1977, originally went to Germany to study religious philosophy. But while there, he immersed himself in the new artistic movement, becoming a multi-talented artist and political activist. Upon returning to Japan in 1922, he immediately began writing about translating a vast number of books on the European avant-garde. He also launched the avant-garde magazine Marble, remarkably uh, yeah. Remarkably, the Ism of Art 1914 to 1924, edited by Hans Alp and L. Lissicky, featured 54. The cover of Marble's first issue. Meanwhile, this 54 is his magazine, Marble. And this is the magazine first issue of the. This magazine is edited by the Brian Thomas. So, meanwhile, Brian follows the former, Ism of Art, 1999. Published his own book in 1926, Research on Constructed Introducing European Avant-Garde Art to Japan. This book. But I'm also created works that combine garment pattern forms. He believed that the purpose of the art was to reorganize humanity's conservative and fixed mindset. He theorized that by disassembling and reconstructing the body like garment patterns. And the left side is he danced, Murayama dance like the position, the feet up. One could achieve it and reconstructing the body like a garment pattern, one could achieve a transformation of the spirit. Furthermore, he conceived of architecture as an ensemble with multiple organs. The line of thinking culminated in his theatrical work. He increasingly focused his effort on theater, viewing the theatrical stage as a model for remaking the world. This is his stuff. Sorry. So, yeah. Right. So, the next one is Kitazono Katsue, the next one. So also same age, 1902 to 1978. Kitazono Katsue, whose younger brother was the avant-garde sculptor Hashimoto Heihachi, was one of Japan's most radical poets. Like Murayama, he was an artistic organizer and editor with exceptional urban sophistication, shiftily absorbing the essence of the European and American art. His poetry incorporated meteorological phenomena such as cloud and geometric form into linguistic experiment. The resonance with Earth's work is unmistakable. Yet Kitazono can also be seen as reacting the imagism already inherited in Japanese haiku, much as Eisenstein and Ezra Pound had done. His poetic innovations were extraordinary as a pioneer of visual poetry in Japan. So, Kitazono treated words as both meaning and material. His typography deconstructively employed book format and technique, shattering conventional reading pattern, letters scattered across pages like constellation, creating concrete poetry. His masterwork, White Album, and experimental piece in VOU, Bow Magazine, which he founded in 1935, demonstrated a rare unity of theoretical sophistication and technical mastery, far surpassing his Japanese contemporary. Stazono also explored photography, understanding the camera as a tool for integrating uh, visual integrating visual and verbal expression. The Bow Club may become a vital nexus for experimental artists. His influence on post-war Japanese concrete poetry was immense. Internationally, he corresponded with Ezra Pound in the 1930s and has recently been reassessed as a major figure in the global modernism. A poet who independently developed techniques parallel to European concrete poetry, proving that avant-garde innovation was never exclusively Western. So the next one, Hasegawa Saburo, 96 to 1957. Hasegawa Saburo was a theorist uh, who perceived that at the heart of Dadaist and constructivist methodologies lay not the Eastern philosophical concept of mu, nothingness, but rather the active utilization of ku, emptiness, void. It is a ku, emptiness, void, that enabled the phenomenal manifestations of change and the contingent emergence of chance occurrence of at each moment. For Hasegawa, the contemporary urban environment was no longer a rigid geometric entity, but rather topologically transforming and continuously informing pattern. This thinking is evident in work such as Tose, this one, urban system, and Shinbutsurigak, this, where he expressed urban space by randomly throwing loops of yarn onto canvas. When Hasegawa visited Mondrian's studio in Paris in 1931, it coincided remarkably with uh, Alexander Calder's visit to the same studio around 1930. Just as Calder conceived the idea of mobiles in Mondrian atelier studio, Hasegawa is said to have discovered the notion of mutable space, space in continuous motion and transformation. This philosophy is clearly manifested in his wartime photographic work, a collaboration with photographer Sakata Minoru, where crumpled newspaper was randomly thrown onto tatami mats and photographed. The vertical and horizontal lines of the tatami served needless to say, as a metaphor of Mondrian's compositional abstract space. After the war, Hasegawa became acquainted with John Cage, and it is said that Cage received a suggestion from Hasegawa regarding compositional method, the technique of overlapping technique but overlapping different temporal and spatial frameworks to organize the thickness, the volume of environment as space-time came to be widely employed in both music and urban planning. It is clear that this endeavor resonated with Alp's work at a profound level. This is my work. What is crucial about the work of these avant-garde figures I have just mentioned is that they never conceived the plastic art merely as arranging superficially interesting, beautiful, or charming forms. Beyond the boundaries of architecture, music, visual arts, and bodily expression, shared a common concern, namely a method of grasping the world, a mode of perceiving reality, and in this, we should recognize a resonance with Alp's work that transcended geographical distance. In the actual world, unexpected things happen, reality cannot be easily controlled, yet this unpredictability exists precisely because there is an expectation based on the belief that fixing reality deterministically is what stabilizes the world. A linear logic, covering toward a single absorbing point. In contrast, what I learned from Alp's work was to perceive time and space as a volume processing a continuous thickness. However, this volume as a whole never appears in the visible form. Rather, like the world that develops as it manifests as a place that enables us when we entrust ourselves to that volume, when we allow ourselves to be embraced by it, when we attempt to enter into it. Translated into technique, to perceive its temporality, cut through this volume with thickness, to extract it, to take it out as a closed form, as static snapshot. Only as such a snapshot can our perception finally recall. That is, repeat and project onto things, replicating them. However, the essence of plastic creation was to return this extracted static image back into the thickness of real space-time, and by sustaining this operation of extraction and reintegration at various levels, to attempt to grasp that original thickness. For instance, it was an attempt to represent an alternative possible space-time different from the present one by reconnecting the extracted form with the other form, countless form. It may ways different from their original continuity. This was fact architecture, music, and poetry sought to create the very possibility itself. This playful mode of thinking was not simply inherited. This playful mode of thinking was not simply inherited in the post-war period. Previous thought was served by wartime chaos And as I mentioned earlier, what came to be exhibited and celebrated in media and the market was only a superficially consumable modernity. There, time and space were discussed in terms of linear progression, or to put in planar terms, concentric expansion. To return to my narrative, when I began my work in the 1970s, the term postmodern was beginning to dominate discourse. Rather than the overly simplistic rebellion, provocation, and translation of 96 counterculture, the very frameworks of time and space presupposed by existing institutions began to be questioned. In such an era, as a young person in my 20s, I found greater insight not in the new culture that had explosively developed through the 1960s and threatened to engulf the world, but in the method that had emerged in the 1920s and 1930s, including those of Japanese earlier avant-garde. Time doesn't evolve, space doesn't expand. They exist originally as a volume of hoarded possibility. To slip through the institutional frames of time and space and grasp and multipliability of environment itself. Time and space are merely nets that humans cast in order to capture it. And edition, and I'd like to introduce some of my huge project, Nakatsukuni Park. For 35 years, I have collaborated with residents in a remote mountain village, Soryocho, Shobara City, Hiroshima Prefecture, a massive flood control region comparative to the...
Okazaki, sorry,
Hello?
can you hear me? Do you
Hey,
hear me?
yeah, time is over, sorry.
Yeah, a bit, because the other speakers are waiting. We're already 20 minutes over the time. And
Sorry.
are there maybe some aspects you would like to highlight coming to the end?
So just only that it's showing the GZ environment, and already so you can see that this is a huge example of the Hans Alps influence echo to this project 35 years. So now this rice field. So sorry to over the time. I'm sorry. It's in range.
No, it was extremely interesting, and I think it makes so clear how the dialogue between artists can really span over time and space. And it's an amazing example. Let me look into the audience. Are there questions you would like to ask? No. Well, thank you so much. Can people, can you help me with the technique here, how we switch now?
Thank you so much. This is absolutely fascinating, and I do wish we had more time.
Thank you very much.
And
I'm sorry for the overtime. Sorry.
Really, it was exciting to see it. I just wish we had more time. I think if you just log off from your end, that then we'll carry on with the rest of the program. And I hope to see you on my next trip to Tokyo and get to see more of your work at that time.
Thank you very much. Please come.
Thank you.
Thank you. So bye-bye.
Bye-bye.